Welcome back to the Global Ledger. I'm Justin. When people think about global trade, they picture container ships, ports, factories, and goods moving across borders. But physical trade is only the surface. Beneath it sits a financial system that most people never see. A system that makes trade possible before goods move and long after they arrive. That system is global trade finance, and it's one of the most important and least understood components of the global dollar system. Today's episode is about that hidden layer, how trade is financed, why dollars dominate trade settlement, and why disruptions in trade finance often precede broader financial crisis. Let's get into it. So why does trade need financing at all? Trade is not instantaneous. Between production and payment, time passes. Exporters need to pay workers, buy inputs, and finance inventory. Importers need time to receive goods, sell them, and generate cash flow. Someone has to bridge that gap. That bridge is trade finance. Without it, global trade would shrink dramatically, regardless of demand. So, what is trade finance? Trade finance is not a single product. It's a network of instruments that manage timing risk, credit risk, currency risk, and settlement risk, to sum them up in a few. Common tools will include letters of credit, trade acceptances, supplier credit, receivables financing, and short-term dollar loans. But what they all have in common is this. They rely on trust, documentation, and balance sheets, not cash. So why is the system shadow by nature? We've heard shadow banking before to use it, but trade finance rarely appears in headlines, and that's because, in my opinion, it's short term. It rolls continuously. And it sits off most public balance sheets. Much of it doesn't trade on exchanges, isn't centrally cleared, and isn't directly backstopped either. Yet it touches nearly every traded good. And this makes trade finance a shadow system. Essential, decentralized, essential. Sorry, I can't talk today. Essential, decentralized, and vulnerable under stress. So, where do dollars connect up into this and their dominance? And this connects right up to Arc 7, which is the global dollar system applied. So, most global dollar trade. Most global trade finance is denominated in dollars, even with the U.S. Uninvolved. Okay, why is this? Because trade finance needs stable units of account, deep funding markets, reliable hedging instruments, and trusted settlement. Dollars provide every single one of those. For exporters and importers, using dollars reduces currency mismatch, financing uncertainty, and rollover risk. The dollar becomes the neutral language, you could say, of trade. So how does this create a hidden dollar demand? And this is a critical insight that I would hope that you could walk away with today. Trade finance creates constant rolling demand for dollars. This isn't like a one-time thing or occasionally. It's continuous. Every shipment involves dollar funding, dollar settlement, and dollar credit lines. This demand exists regardless of trade balances or reserve holdings or political alignment, which is why dollar shortages often emerge inside trade finance first. So what happens during this type of stress? During calm periods, trade finance is invisible, really. But during stress, it becomes fragile. This is when funding tightens, credit lines are pulled, documentation starts to slow, or confidence starts to erode. trade finance contracts. And when trade finance contracts, shipments slow, inventories fall, prices rise, and economic stress spreads. So think about that. When trade finance contracts, shipments slow, inventories fall, prices rise, and economic stress spreads. And we'll connect this up with COVID things and all this stuff. But for now, this is why trade disruptions often precede recessions. Why is the system so hard to backstop? So, unlike banks, trade finance spans a lot of jurisdictions. It involves private counterparties as well and relies on trust more than regulation. It's difficult to support directly. Policymakers can ease dollar funding conditions, support bank balance sheets, and stabilize markets, but they cannot easily replace private credit decisions, documentation chains, or counterparty confidence, right? Which makes trade finance one of the system's most sensitive pressure points, if you will. So this connects up with what we're talking about in ARC 7, because this episode completes, I think, a key triangle, okay? With episode 61 being reserve currencies, episode 62, energy as monetary infrastructure, and this episode, episode 63, trade finance as the operational layer. Together, they explain why global trade depends on dollar liquidity, why stress travels through finance before goods, and why shortages appear where few people look. In the next episode, we're going to start touching on some of these topics. So global trade doesn't just rely on ships and ports. It relies on short-term credit, rolling dollar liquidity, and trust embedded in balance sheets. Trade finance is the system beneath trade. Quiet when it works, but fragile when it doesn't. And understanding it helps explain why global slowdowns can arrive suddenly, why dollar shortages ripple or seem to ripple globally, and why finance often breaks before trade does. I want to thank you for listening to episode 63 of the Global Ledger. We talked about trade finance as the operational layer, the shadow beneath trade. In the next episode, we're going to continue adding to our ARC 7, the global dollar system applied, and we're going to talk about cross-border banking. This is how global banks manufacture dollars. I think it's a really important one, especially when we're trying to connect everything up with the global system. Once again, I'm Justin, and thank you for being here.